Hey, Rich, one of the questions that just came in, which is not surprising, it came in from Jill. So, Jill, thank you for submitting it. Her question is, please be sure to ask Rich how tip is supposed to help the customer, and how to calculate it. I just don't know what to tell the borrower in terms of how it helps them. So how would you, I mean, I have some responses to that, Rich, but how would you answer that?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's something that we've talked about offline a lot, and so I think it's not surprising that question's coming up from your audience. The tip is probably the one part of the loan estimate that I think is most likely to raise questions from consumers. I think the reason is that the percentage amount is going to be so high and so different from the other percentage amounts on the form that it'll really stand out. The reason it's on the form, I think we talked about this last time, is because Congress added it to the TILA disclosure requirements, and so we had to integrate it with the other disclosures into the loan estimate. It's a statutory requirement. There was really no way around it. We consumer tested it to try and make it as understandable as possible. And in consumer testing, consumers generally understood that a lower tip was better. And that is because it's essentially, and this is the descriptor that's used for it, it's a total amount of interest that the consumer will pay over the life of the loan as a percentage of the loan amount. And I think when consumers read that's a total amount of interest, they know paying less interest is better, and so they wanted to see a lower percentage amount. So I think that even for the participants in consumer testing that were lower financial education, lower education generally, they did still generally understand that the lower tip amount would be better. How to describe it to a consumer, I think that you want to achieve two things. One is explain the concept to them that this basically totals up every single interest payment that they'll pay over the 30-year loan term, or whatever loan term you're presenting to a consumer, and then adds up that huge number and divides it by the principal amount. And so that's a good way to describe it to a consumer. I think that trying to explain why the percentage is so high, I think that's going to be the more difficult thing to do, but also I think it's probably something that you want to try and achieve to lower consumers' anxiety about that high number. I don't know, Dave, if you have any thoughts about that. I know you've been thinking about this for a while as well.
Yeah, well, I'm gonna walk everybody through what came out of a call I had with Jeremy Forcier a few weeks ago, and then I would like every loan officer to go around and provide your framing. So each of you, I'm going to call on, let's see, I'll call on Dan first. So Dan, be ready, then Danny, and then Sean. Because I do think this is a big one. But this is what Jeremy and I came up with a few weeks ago, that the CFPB wants to make sure 2007 never happens again, and that when a family gets into mortgage debt, they really understand it. TIP helps make the importance of the mortgage decision even more clear and valuable. TIP helps you see how expensive a mortgage can be and how important the mortgage decision can be to building wealth with real estate. And then kind of going on, TIP and total cost over 5 years helps a family make an important decision. So, to add some color to that, I mean, everybody needs to have their, what's right for you. But at the end of the day, we can all say that whether we think that's a great number or not, doesn't matter. That's what it is. Let's make the best of it. And there's no doubt that it really helps make the point with the family that a mortgage is expensive, and a little change in rate can really throw up that cost over time. And so this metric, at least in my opinion, there's no better metric than to make that point really crystal clear. So why don't we go around, and Dan, why don't you provide some color around this, and let's go, each one of you, try to do it within a minute, no longer than 2 minutes, and then we'll keep going. Dan?
Yeah, Dave, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, one of the approaches that I'm taking with my real estate agents and my team is much like what Jeremy said, is the CFPB wants to make sure that today's borrowers understand the total and true costs of getting a mortgage. So they understand all the fees and how the fees relate to the rate. And then as far as TIP is concerned, kind of what I'm using, these new loan estimate disclosures, I think they're positive. So I'm selling the positive aspect of it to my agents and my clients, such that for me, it's taking the focus off of just getting beat up over a small difference in rate and a small difference in fees and focusing on the total cost. So as it relates to TIP, looking at a 30-year versus a 25-year, a 25-year versus a 20, or a 30 compared to a 20, and down. So, and that's where Mortgage Coach comes into play. I mean, that's how I'm leveraging, and it's just right there. And so I can show that to my clients, I can show that to the agents, and let them know that we're kind of already using that talk track in our presentations.
Beautiful, beautiful. So Sean, I know you've got a lot to speak to this, and we're going to showcase the video in I'd say in probably about 10 minutes. I'll bring you in and have you walk through how you're telling this to realtors. But anything you have to add to this and how loan officers should be talking about TIP?
Yeah, for me, it's again, I think anyone who's on this call, you're probably already using total cost analysis, and none of us have really been hiding from the fact that a mortgage costs money. And I'm pretty sure when they finance a car, there's interest. It costs money to borrow money. So I look at the truth in lending, and it shows, $1 million loan, you're going to have $800,000 in interest. It showed as a dollar amount. So I really I'm very curious to see how the consumer reacts to TIP, because I just don't think it's really that big of a deal. And what you guys will see later in that video is my approach to TIP is to show how cheap money is right now compared to what it's been historically. So I love the new forms. I think they do provide clarity. I'm not excited about everything to do with TRID, but as far as TIP goes, I don't think it's really that. I'm very curious to see if it comes up as a big talking point or not.
Now, real quick, Sean, I think this is a question that a lot of loan officers have, is are you going to talk about it before you give the LE so that, you've already educated the family and it's not a surprise, or are you going to give them the LE and see who asks you about it?
Oh, no, absolutely. I've been out. I've probably spoken, presented to over 200 real estate agents now, and the slide you guys will see in that video is their favorite slide, just historically showing what TIP is. But proactive is always better than reactive. If I show them, then it's not me hiding anything from them. So I'd rather address it up front. And I've got, I'm going on tour today. I've got 5 total cost analysis in my hand, and I love the new format where it shows the first lien TIP. It's got the first lien 5-year cost right after. There's nothing for us to hide from. It's really easy to explain, in my opinion.
Right on. I agreed. Danny, any thoughts that you have to answer this for the community?
I'm actually really excited about the TIP conversations because, I think all of our goal is really to educate our clients to help them make better decisions. And seeing that big number really drives the conversation, or sharing that with them in advance, and allows us to, give the truth behind it, which is, yes, there's a cost associated with borrowing, but there's a tremendous benefit as well. And I think Sean's point that money is so cheap right now, we can talk about things like, the cost of money over time and the opportunity cost that comes with, the alternatives, which is putting money into the houses in the form of greater down payment versus borrowing it. So it really, I think, leads us into the benefits conversation and the conversation about opportunity that comes with borrowing by, starting off with, hey, this is how much you're going to pay, but here's what you're getting for that money. Nobody wants to believe they're getting a cost without a benefit, and now we have this great tool that we can use to lead into that conversation.
Love it. Richard, before we bring in another question, anything you want to add after hearing what the mortgage professionals and loan officers had to say?
Yeah, I heard a focus on the time value of money and the benefits that you get, and I think that those are 2 things that could help the conversation to explain that this is an amount of interest that's paid over 30 years of the loan term, or whatever the loan term is, and so the number looks very high, but think about what you're getting every single one of those 30 years, the opportunity to be in that home for the interest rate you got that you can't afford. A conversation like that I think can help explain it. But I'll leave that to the professionals who have worked with consumers face to face.
Well, the advice for a mortgage coach is now it's more important than ever that you really work on your pre-LE conversation. You need to make sure that your clients are more educated. You need to make sure that they understand cost over 5 years. They understand TIP. The more you can deliver that with graphs and charts and you can put it on their mobile device, the better off the family's going to be, the smoother the transaction will be. So it's just more important than ever that you talk about that pre-LE and they understand TIP, they understand total cost.